One. All right. So we're going deeper and deeper into the sacred heart. So now we're going to get ready for going into desire and the emotions and these different things we talked about in the description of this class. But first, just want to welcome you back and just take a moment, maybe have some water if you need. And also, the invitation came through to think about maybe drawing, sketching, painting, creating a collage of your lion to facilitate connection. Or maybe it already exists in some artwork that you have seen, but it can be really supportive to have a physical picture or a statue or whatever you like, a sculpture in your space to connect and to really keep that visceral connection of this embodiment with your lion. All right, now onward into the sacred heart link. The truth about your beautiful heart. Oh, wow. So our hearts have always been there for us. They have always been loving us. We did not yet know. We were not yet on the frequency to feel it. And that can be quite an intense truth. You know, so many times in our life, if we felt abandoned or alone or unlovable, unworthy, and always reaching, seeking for it outside. And that's part of the illusion, the Maya, right? The masters call the Maya, the illusion of the density of the physical realm is thinking, feeling that whatever it is that we desire is outside, or it will come through the attainment of something outside of ourselves. So this is the truth about our heart that we now get to embrace and to connect with this I am presence. There's also an element of soul with this. And one of the phrases that came through more recently is, this is my best friend. It's my best friend that I didn't know I had. So that can be a really powerful revelation for us to continue to unpack. And a lot of us, myself, and I'm talking about myself when I say this, you know, we not only were we not connected consciously to our heart to feel the love, but we unconsciously made it a storage depot for pain or really heavy emotions like shame, guilt, disappointment, or grief. And so the question is to start to look at this, starting to have that visual of your heart being a stained glass, like a lantern almost glowing, a stained glass, and thinking of anywhere unconsciously. And we call this the past life, right? The pre-ascension process life, where we were disconnected from a lot of things, or we just didn't know. And that's okay. It was unconscious. You know, where did we perhaps make it a storage depot for anything other than love and our own preciousness, our own worth? And so the question is, what do you no longer need to carry? The heart itself carries, so the original codes of the heart are infinite love and divine grace, also infinite creativity and passion, life force, passion, light force. So I invite you in your mind's eye, and you could sketch this too, use this again in another meditation kind of, but this process of starting to see the chambers of your heart, and there's so many of them, see them lit up, like they're illuminated from behind, like a red ruby garnet, red jasper, these panes of stained glass that are glowing. So you see where some are stronger. The courage of your convictions and self-identity and truths are stronger and they're glowing. See where some of these planes of glass perhaps are flickering on and off, like you're working on this belief system, this trust in yourself, this trust or believing in a desire, in a passion project, a creative venture. And you also want to see where some of these planes of stained glass are maybe really dim, they're not illuminated, maybe the bulb is out entirely. So you want to see what can be released and make space, allow there to be more space. In the old days, the old paradigm on conscious living, when we made the heart a storage depot, because we weren't connected to it, maybe it felt or we felt empty, right? And so we held on to things to at least feel something, right? Maybe that helped us stay anchored on the planet and the physical plane during the more dense phases of our awakening process, of our disentangling. So see what can be released now. And you'll know, you feel it like, oh yeah, I'm really done with that. We want to reclaim our energy back from time and space. And this could be past life stuff too that you're aware of, but experiences, situations, anything that was taken on by someone else, that was someone else. They projected it to you. They said it to you. They called you something, they put something on you. Allow yourself to just remove like old layers. I love this beautiful artwork here, Immaculate Hearts. That's what we're getting into, is there's a deeper layer of the heart that is new. It's always been there. It's ancient, but it may be newer for us to connect with, which was the point of this webinar, is to have the courage of the lions and the Lyrans and the Lion's Gate to support us going very deep, because it becomes this almost like a labyrinth of infinite corridors of wisdom and love and feeling. And it can be unpleasant feelings too. So we're going to get into emotions now. Emotions is energy. So when we were created by a creator in the flesh, divine sparks of infinite intelligence, unique, individuated in physical form, emotions are one of our most advanced light body technology or gifts. And it's interesting because in the old ways of being, we were uncomfortable with this. We feel them so strongly, even if it's a passing moment, right, of anger or grief, or when you stub your toe, it can feel like it's taking over your entire experience for a moment. And sometimes that feels too big. So we suppress, we repress, we kind of had walls up to feel less, right? Because it just felt like too much. So now we're getting to this expansion with our light quotient and these parts of ourselves linking up and establishing connection, where our own network, our own crystalline grid is more solid and stabilized. And it becomes easier to start to work with emotions as wisdom teachers visiting you. And it's a transient experience. There's an element when all the ancient masters talked about impermanence, right? And that the only constant is change. And when we start to live more as a fluid life stream, as a crystalline light being like that, aware of what is, that doesn't feel so great, but it's coming up. I'm going to allow it and just let it stream through you. It's a live stream, a life stream. It becomes a lot easier to embrace. So starting to decompress how we would feel about emotions before, starting to embrace that maybe, just the possibility even, that maybe these are for our empowerment, wisdom, and expansion. And that we can start to look at repressed emotions, also starting to look at the quantum mechanics of matter, that thought precedes emotion. So whatever you're thinking is going to create an emotion and then a biochemical response from that. So we want to start to decompress our definitions of anger. We're going to work through disentangling bitterness and resentment, all these thorns that are in the heart. And the idea is not to avoid anymore, but to dive deeply into what presents. So we live in a series of waves, and in the programming of linear constructs and definitions and boxes with sharp edges, this was not how we function. So this is part of the quantum functioning that we can embrace, that we're actually bobbing along in an ocean that has undulations and waves, and that there's constant movement and information and energy. And so it's no longer to avoid these experiences and think that we're incapable or it's going to be terrible or we're going to die from it, right? It's coming from a more unified, heart-centered space of capability, responsibility, know thyself, and start to learn all of this being forms of primordial consciousness running through us in this experience. And the Tai Chi Gong practice will greatly assist with this because it works directly with the subconscious realms, starting to come more into our mastery. How many times have we been Jedi masters? A lot. And it's all in the DNA storage, in the libraries, inside of our bodies, our memories. So it's starting to just open the doors to allow ourselves to work with emotions, motion, energy in motion, and that we are energy beings. So we're going to talk about some of these myths with anger and start to decompress these definitions of what we were told or maybe what was modeled to us in childhood with emotions when we had parents or authority, perceived authority figures that were our guides in childhood, doing their best through their own unconsciousness to function, right? And if you think how long humanity has been shut down from the power of our emotions, well, a very long time. And that's part of this quantum shift right now, is that the emotions are bringing us information. And we may have in childhood, those that did not know how to handle the power of emotion, because it is very powerful. So you may have personal experience with what's the word, discordant, or domestic situations growing up that we can start to heal from, or also society, right? So we're going to get into it now. Emotion, like we said, energy and motion. Now, anger itself can be a really powerful force, a catalyst to freedom, also to establishing boundaries, saying no to something, giving ourselves boundaries as well. Like if we're the kind of person that self-sacrifices or overgives, maybe we get bitter and angry about that anger and bitterness can show us where we went over our own boundary and we betrayed ourselves by overgiving, right? We went against our own guidance. So starting to see how the emotions are actually giving us information to support the navigation. So the ability to say no to that which does not resonate in regards to with other people or old programs. As the nodes of fate, the lunar dragon has just shifted July 17th from the Scorpio Taurus axis into the Libra Aries axis. And so you will find a lot of initiations coming up in relationships with diplomacy and conscious, compassionate communication and boundaries, and no longer overgiving or being a doormat or self-sacrificing. You're going to start to become very aware of your own needs and balancing that. So there's the individual and the collective, and really being in the balance of that axis of polarity. We all have different history and different backgrounds with anger. Our relationship with anger, our relationship with people being angry at us. And like I said, what was modeled to us as children? How were our parents? So for me, I had a dictator tyrant for a father who would have emotional outbursts and have temper tantrums. And it was terrifying because he was a 6'2" huge Italian man. So that was my dad. Uncontrollable anger and violent, and it was really scary, and he would scream at everyone. And then I had my mom, who is extremely repressed and shut down and like an iceberg. So I had the two polarities growing up with that and not wanting anything to do with it. And so it took me a very long time, and why I'm so passionate about this work, what we're going to get into now, is separating the energetic of anger, which is actually a primordial energy, from abuse or distortion or violence. We're going to separate those. So a lot of times in our experience, they're vastly interwoven because of the immaturity or the unconsciousness of those who were modeling it to us, right? So before we get into any of this even further, I just want to say all of this is up to your own discernment. You are your own guide. You are your own teacher with this information. I'm just going to be presenting some myths around emotions, and also sharing some of my own personal experience, and you can extrapolate what is really good for you at this time. So separating anger from abuse. We have a lot of associations with anger and abuse, anger and violence, especially if, like myself, you grew up with unhealthy emotional expressions around you. And in actuality, when we're going to just look at energetics and the quantum perspective, so not the distorted human and the narcissism and the like all of that kind of stuff, these two actually have nothing to do with each other. So a lot of us this whole time have been misassociating the power of anger, bunching it with these other things that we don't want anything to do with, right? We don't want to be violent. We don't want to abuse anybody. So for me personally, I was scared for a very long time to get in touch with my anger, because I thought I would be then hurting other people or have explosions or lose control and be violent. I was basing that on what I had seen growing up, right? So it took a while for me to realize, oh, well, that's not me. That's totally not who I am or how I would handle these things. And over time, just realize I've got to get in touch with this because it's coming up subconsciously. So this is where we worry about hurting other people. Well, with our suppression and repression, maybe becoming passive aggressive, or critical. That's how we could actually unconsciously do the thing we're trying to avoid doing. And so the best method is to dive in. have some time for yourself and see what's coming up for me. What is this? So the point of this webinar is to support you in disengaging judgment and definitions and really taking some time to feel in and learn with yourself and build your own kind of vibrational frequency library, inventory, or categorization of what is what. So abuse is abuse, violence is violence. If we're looking at the primordial forces, anger is anger, and it's a sacred form of divine energy. And we were programmed to fear this, to judge it, to repress it, to please others, to fit in. There's social mores, right? Look at cancel culture right now. If you say the wrong thing, we're going to destroy you. So there's these interesting veiled threats against being a feeling being or having boundaries or standing up. This is very, very poignant right now, and will continue the next couple years with things. Maybe we feared feeling it for losing control, or like I said, hurting another person, or we are confusing anger with violence or abuse that we experience through others. Another myth about anger is that it's going to be this huge, explosive, loud, massive, just like a massive amount of energy. And it doesn't always have to be that way. We're going to talk about that a little bit more on the next slide, but just gently starting to open the layers of this, that anger doesn't have to be a huge energy. If it does feel huge, it's letting you know there's repressed, suppressed, unresolved things. That's okay. You work with that, work with the inner child, work with your experiences. That's what this time is so powerful right now with all of this heart-centered energy. But starting to look at anger, it doesn't have to be huge and explosive and disruptive and chaotic. It can actually be a sacred flow of information for us to work with privately, to receive information from, guidance, wisdom, how to take appropriate action, or how to have a conscious communication with somebody, or how to look and see, was that even warranted, or am I attaching a previous experience onto and projecting it onto this person? So that's letting us know where we have a kind of a stockade of unresolved things, issues from childhood that we could work with a professional, versus when you're in the moment and you're receiving information of anger where a boundary is crossed and you're like kind of maybe shocked that someone would do something, and you have to speak up and be the teacher in that moment and not come from ego, but just say, oh, that happened and I really didn't feel okay with that. Like, can we work through this? So you see how there's nuances, there's layers. Consciously communicate when appropriate. It's not always appropriate to talk with someone else about this. So that's up to you to discern. But anger is an energetic catalyst for change and our own unique path to further empowerment and also authenticity, authentic expression. We get angry when we are wronged or experience something unjust. And this is our biochemical way. If we go to very primal levels as a mammal, as this physical avatar body, the anger is a way of saying no, or having a boundary, or leaving a dangerous scenario or situation sometimes. So you have to start to really open this. This is a whole portal. Like, well, what is this? What is it here to show me? What are the roots of it? Is it in this now from this immediate situation, or is this coming from way in the past? So when we swallow and repress anger, it leads to illness, autoimmune, heart issues. Myths about anger. Anger is toxic. Women and men were programmed. We were all programmed to repress it as children, all of us. So it comes out in different ways, comes out in passive aggressive or control, different ways. Can anger be toxic? Of course. But suppressing the anger, or faking peace, or faking nice, or denying that there's a problem when there's actually a problem, right? This can be really toxic, or like we said, passive aggressive behaviors. So you can start to look at people in your situation. If you're noticing they're struggling with passive aggressive behaviors, maybe they're not yet in touch with their anger. They don't feel comfortable. They're not in touch with their power, right? Because that's letting you know that they've gotten to another place that's beyond their control. So it helps to expand compassion for ourselves and others, as we are all learning. We're all learning about our superpowers in lifetime as we go, right? And we're all doing our best. So anger, expressing it. And again, I do it all privately myself. I'll have discussions, poetry will come out, artistic creations, or I'll work out, or I'll deep clean my house because I have all this physical energy. I got to move it out, right? And I let the energy surge through me. There's inspiration that will come. Maybe I've created something amazing from behind that feeling of what that was here to reveal. So there are so many depths to this. Another myth, excuse me, is that anger is a sign that you need to heal. So we're going to talk about some of like more shallow spiritual stuff, like the meme culture, certain things, right? That they say, oh, well, if you're angry, well, you have a low vibe, you have a low frequency. That's not spiritual. And it's like, well, we're here in human form and we need to start like, again, expanding the definition of what emotion is and what anger is. There's a difference between him being hot tempered, of course, right? Right. That would be different. But a lot of people will say, and this is what I was receiving, like, oh, well, you're angry, you're an angry woman, you've got a wound you need to heal, or there's something wrong with you, or you still have more work to do. It's like, well, maybe depends on the person and the situation and where they are in their journey. But it could also just be giving you information that something maybe isn't healthy for you to take part in, or to participate, or to be with somebody. You got to really take your time, and investigate thoroughly. This is where we've been gaslit from our emotions, and why this is uncomfortable. I mean, we shouldn't even be uncomfortable, right, to be emotional beings. So you see how powerful the programming has been, right? But yet we signed up for that, right? The amnesia, so that the remembering would be all the more sweet, right? So yes, we were gaslit. We were programmed away from the power of emotions as information to let us know a lot of really important things, whether to say no to something or someone. This is important for men and for women. Men, the old paradigm, men weren't allowed to feel or to grieve or to talk about their feelings, and they stuffed them in, and it could cause heart issues, right? Grief. And same for women, stuff it down. That's not feminine. You're not allowed to feel that. Then it comes out as autoimmune. So the body will show us where we've been stuffing the information, and then it crystallizes into physical form. Anger is a very appropriate response to some things. It can also be an essential part of our healing process, and also major part of our exiting the matrix programs, where you just say, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to take it anymore. There's that really funny quote, like, I'm mad as hell and I'm just not going to take it anymore. And I think it's from a show. I can't remember, but it's so fun. And it just really exemplifies that energy. So you see how that anger can be a catalyst for you to close the door on something that no longer serves, and move on and take that electric atomic energy, that solar energy, that motivation and clarity, and put it into something else, right? So you start to have more discernment with where your energy is going. Another common myth, now it depends on you. Another myth is that anger is a cover for grief. Well, sometimes anger is just anger. Sometimes anger is a cover for fear. We're not allowing ourselves to go deeper into layers of vulnerability or grief. We're hanging on. So it really depends, But what we're trying to say is that there's no one size fits all definition for this. There's no set in stone rules. So you want to see, well, what is true for you? And this is where the lion heart energy comes in, of having the courage to face what is coming up and to know that you can. And there's a very beautiful and powerful, magical, healthy, healing reason as to why it's coming up in you at this time to be dealt with, right? Another one, anger is just ego. Well, is it always ego? Anger is just a defense mechanism underneath. Well, again, is it always? And so the point of this is to kind of help you start to pull apart, other programs sometimes can be anger is actually hurt, sadness, grief. That's what you should really use to get to that hurt, that vulnerability, tenderness, the pain underneath. Again, we say this is true sometimes. It's been true for me sometimes, but it's not a truth that you can just outright apply to anything. So starting to see the fluidity of our experience, getting comfortable sitting with these emotions and not judging them, but asking them for information, guidance, and wisdom. Sometimes if I'm having a lot of anger come up, now, for me, I can share different perspectives of whether it's trauma related, old story related, like victim programming or an abusive experience that happened, where I have to still work through that and like get my power back from that person or that situation, or it's elemental because I have so much fire in my chart. I have a lot of Aries in my chart, Leo rising. I've so much fire. And in my Ayurveda, my dosha, my biochemical, a lot of fire again. So fire can be prone to anger. And so that's why I work with the water elemental and find ways to productively move that anger around and see, is this misplaced? Typically, when I experience this, it's because I'm overdoing, overgiving, and I haven't given myself enough, right? And that leads into other things we're going to get into bitterness and resentment. Sometimes our grief, our collapse, our hurt, our sadness, especially as women, is a defense mechanism covering our anger. That actually anger is underneath the grief, anger is underneath the hurt, anger is underneath expressions of what we would call depression or malaise or chronic fatigue, sadness, that we actually feel more comfortable in collapse because of patriarchal programming, right? Because anger is feeling more powerful and we feel so disempowered that the only way to express our emotions with someone is through hurt or something that is able to garner sympathy, because we don't feel comfortable enough expressing that kind of anger. So again, see what rings true for you. All of these have been true for me at some point. Just know that anger does not have to be big to be real. And then we start to cultivate this relationship as it's an energetic, and maybe you feel it like fire in the belly, you know, a little bit of burning inside of yourself, this passion, this righteous indignation, whatever it is for you, starting to connect with what that means, what it feels like for you, and starting to work with it as a force of change and flexibility and genius and innovation, right? Very powerful. So now we're going to do a little consciousness tune-up, because when we talk about all of this work in the heart, well, what's going to come up right away? First three chakras, right? And all of the stuff that we were imprinted with in our first life, as we say, the first step in the human form. So first three levels of consciousness tune-up. So I invite you, we're going to see these beautiful colors here. We've got beautiful ruby red, the carnelian or citrine kind of orange, gold starting to come in, and then the beautiful gold or labradorite or whatever beautiful yellow stone that you like, yellow topaz. So I invite you now to close your eyes. And you can place a hand on your heart if you like, or both of them. But we're going to do root, sacral, and solar plexus chakra upgrades. So closing your eyes, bringing your sight, your inner gaze back into your beautiful heart center, affirming all that we've been discussing, all of these shifts, getting more in touch with the divine love, the divine consciousness, that infinite connection that is in your heart. And now we're going to welcome in the new light of new earth, that beautiful Syrian energy of silver, white, platinum, sapphire, blue, of Sirius raining down. We're going to call in Archangel Raphael and the emerald ray of Gaia, Sophia. It's a kind of ribbon around us. And now I invite you in your mind's eye to see your first three chakras. So see that ruby, that carnelian, and that kind of golden sunflower, those colors, we're going to invite those rays to wash over. So root, sacral, and solar plexus, ruby, carnelian, and golden sunflower, washing like a stream up over those chakras. Continuing to see these beautiful colors. So seeing that ruby garnet ray at the root chakra, and then seeing that beautiful vivid orange, that life-giving orange of citrine or carnelian at the sacral, at the belly, and then bringing in that beautiful yellow at the solar plexus, and just allowing those beautiful rays to just blast and bathe these sacral and root and solar plexus chakras with these colors, allowing them to wash out any distortion, separation, any gray, patchy, dark, patchy stuff, and just feeling that refreshment. And we're going to say aloud together to embody this shift: regrid, click, regrid, click, regrid, click. And then now we're going to do a tube torus overlay. So we see those chakras, they're happy, they're glowing, they're refreshed. It's like we hit a reset button. And now we're going to see the beautiful tube torus, which kind of looks like, you could see it in your mind's eye. Maybe it looks like a giant straw of platinum light, or maybe it's kind of like a weave, like DNA helix kind of weaving around you, but just bringing in that tube torus connection, kind of platinum and violet, lavender, gold light in that tube torus around our entire being. And now bringing the attention to the heart chakra, that emerald green, and we're going to connect and we're going to weave one at a time. Now we're going to bring back that beautiful vertical golden figure 8, that golden infinity loop. And first we're going to just start, we're going to do 3 different threads, 3 different vertical loops, but we're going to start with the first one. And we're going to connect the heart chakra again with the solar plexus. So weaving that vertical figure 8 up and down, up and down, up and down. And then that's going to just run on its own now. And then now we're going to open a second weaving vertical figure 8 from the heart to the sacral chakra in the belly, weaving it up and down and up and down. And then that stays running. And we're going to bring a third one now. So a third vertical golden figure 8 from the heart chakra, weaving, connecting down to the root. So vertical looping up and down and up and down. So we are flooding the first 3 chakras with divine love light, divine I am truth, and our own solar knowingness, upgrading, expanding, adding more love and more light into these storage depots of information. And you can do this often, anytime the programming comes up. All right, so now when you're ready to open your eyes, and we're going to come into holy desire. So one of the biggest things with desire is the fear of disappointment. So we're going to work through this. And this is part of that chakra upgrade, is that when we are afraid to want something, to dream, because we're afraid of disappointment, we need to remember, oh, I was just referencing the past. And we're in a 0 point consciousness, right? That's the truth of the realms we have access to. So you can just shake that off. Oh yeah, I forgot what is here. I forgot what is true. No worries. Come on back. We're going to talk about the wisdom of disillusionment so that we can upgrade this thought form and no longer fear desire, but relish and enjoy our desires, because we are disentangled. We are detached from the outcome. It is the process of being a being that has a desire, that is the juice, that is the magic, that is the yumminess.